Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Albany. My name is Reverend Sam Trumbore, and I serve as minister of this congregation. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who we honor this weekend, presented the prestigious Ware Lecture for our 1966 Unitarian Universalist General Assembly. He praised the work of Unitarian Universalists at the Montgomery bus boycott and our outpouring of support from the march from Selma to Montgomery in 1965. And then he challenged us. His words ring as true now as they did over 55 years ago. Here are a few of them from the beginning of the lecture, which references earlier Rip Van Winkle sleeping through the American Revolution. Here are his words. One of the great misfortunes of history is that all too many individuals and institutions find themselves in a great period of change and yet fail to achieve the new attitudes and outlooks of the new situation demands. There is nothing more tragic than to sleep through the revolution. And there can be no gainsaying of the fact that the social revolution is taking place in our world today. We see it in other nations in the demise of colonialism. We see it in our own nation in the struggle against racial segregation and discrimination. And we notice this struggle. We are aware of the fact that the social revolution is taking place in our midst. Victor Hugo once said that there is nothing more powerful in all the world than an idea whose time has come. The idea whose time has come today is the idea of freedom and human dignity. And so all over the world, we see something of a freedom explosion. And this reveals that we are in the midst of revolutionary times. An older order is passing away and a new order is coming into being. In response to Dr. King's words, may we be awake for the new order coming into being today in society and in Unitarian Universalism as we join together in the celebration of life. And our opening music?
Not yet. As we continue with a 2-week service date, Martin Luther King Jr., I would like to mention the significance of musical selections that have been used in these services. Last Sunday, we focused exclusively on Black composers. Scott Joplin, often referred to as the king of ragtime, achieved fame starting in the late 1800s for his ragtime compositions, music that was born out of the African American community. During his brief career, he wrote over 100 original ragtime pieces, a ragtime ballet, and 2 operas. Joplin performed at the World's Fair of 1893, which played a major part in making ragtime a national craze by 1897. His efforts helped pave the way for young Black artists to reach American audiences of all races. In 1973, Joplin's music was rediscovered and received wide airplay due to the release of the Academy Award-winning film, The Sting, which included the entrance, which was performed by Isaac Allen last week, as well as several other of his songs. A special Pulitzer Prize was bestowed posthumously to celebrate Joplin's bicentennial year and his contributions to American music. James Hubert Blake, known as Eubie Blake, was one of the most important figures in early 20th century African American music. He was an outstanding American pianist and composer of ragtime, jazz, and popular music. Eubie collaborated with singer and lyricist Noble Sissle on the first all-Black musical hit on Broadway called Shuffle Along. The production was long-running, closing after 500 performances, and yielded his best-known song, I'm Just Wild About Harry. Last week, we showed him playing his own song. Eubie's collaborations included writing scores for a number of United Service Organization, or USO, shows during World War II. Eubie was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1981 at the tender age of 94, after performing, creating, and educating the whole world in musical arts for 86 years. Edward Kennedy, or Duke Ellington, is considered by many to be the greatest jazz composer and band leader of his time. As one of the originators of big band jazz, Ellington led his band for more than half a century, composed thousands of scores, and created one of the most distinctive ensemble sounds in all of Western music. He used new harmonies to blend his musicians' individual sounds, ingenious combinations of instruments, and illuminated subtle moods, all which was unique to the music of that era. Not limiting himself to jazz innovation, however, Ellington also wrote wonderful popular songs, including Don't Get Around Much Anymore and Satin Doll, which I performed last week. Many of these songs are in the Great American Songbook and basically will live on forever. Duke was awarded a posthumous Pulitzer Prize Special Award in 1999. Now I hope you can see why we selected songs by these phenomenal Black composers for last week's music. So, what's on the agenda for today's music lineup? Moving ahead in time, today we expand to share performances by Black musicians as well as diverse performers of Black music. During Gathering Music, you heard a Greenwich, New York American Dixieland jazz group active in the 50s and 60s. What a fabulous instrumental arrangement of a well-known African American folk song that was. Next up, you will hear the Resistance Revival Chorus singing a traditional gospel song. This group of more than 60 diverse women and non-binary singers joined together to breathe song into the resistance, to explore activism, and to uplift and address how historically marginalized women have been in the music industry. Then our first unisong is an energetic arrangement from our Gray Hymnal, sung by a racially diverse trio. Sifamandla is a freedom song from South Africa from the time of the apartheid. Listen carefully to the message of the words as you join along. During our offertory, I am thrilled that Nelson Jacobs Moore will sing We Shall Overcome, a key anthem of the American civil rights movement. Then we will conclude today's music by singing a song written by the Black jazz artist, educator, and activist, Billy Taylor. I wish I knew how it feels to be free. has most recently been recorded last year by the Blind Boys of Alabama, an American gospel group of whom the majority of singers are or were visually impaired. Founded in 1939, this singing group has been recognized by a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame, and invited to the White House on multiple occasions. You might consider going to YouTube to listen and learn more about the Blind Boys and how they not only borrow from the old traditions of gospel music, but have created a new gospel sound for the 21st century worldwide. All right, that's enough talking. Let's move on and embrace the beauty of today's music.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. We are the Resistance Revival Chorus. You better walk, walk, walk.
And I invite you to say these words that you'll see at the bottom of the screen as we light our chalice. Welcoming all free seekers of truth and meaning, we gather to recite the human spirit, inspire its growth and development, to respond morally and ethically to the world, and sustain a vital religious
respond morally to a troubled world, staying vital and nurturing.
And let us hear that piece of music that Randy so beautifully introduced.
Sifaman kosi, wukugi sabi. Sifaman kosi, siawadina.
I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. That one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, my country tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's cry. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
And we welcome our Facebook viewers. I'm thinking I wanted to end that with amen. A beautiful blessing to all of us to hear those words again. Welcome our Facebook viewers. And my name is Reverend Sam Trumbore. I'm here with Sigrun Newell, and we're your service team today for the service. I have a reading, and we have 3 different quotes I'd like to share with you. The first, I'd like to quote, as I did last week, from the beginning of Heather McGhee's book, The Sum of Us. Some more of those words. The logical extension of the zero-sum story is that a future without racism is something white people should fear because there will be nothing good for them in it, so different from what we just heard. They should be arming themselves, as they have been in record numbers, for protection since the Obama presidency, because demographic change will end in a dog-eat-dog race war. Obviously, this isn't the story we want to tell. It's not even what we believe. The same research I found showing that white people increasingly see the world through a zero-sum prism showed Black people do not. African Americans just don't buy that our gain has to come at the expense of white people. And time and again, history has shown that we're right. The civil rights victories that were so bitterly opposed in the South ended up being a boon to the region, resulting in stronger local economies and more investments in infrastructure and education. Words from the Reverend Dr. William Barber, co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. And he wrote this to promote McGhee's book. The most consistent lie of racism is the lie that it benefits most white people. Just as Dr. King observed that poor white people have nothing to feed their children but Jim Crow, systemic racism hurts everybody. That is why we have to link together across every dividing line to build a fusion coalition that can remake a nation that works for all of us. And finally, Dr. King's words from his acceptance speech for his Nobel Prize awarded in 1964. He said, "I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the bright daylight of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word." Here ends his words, and let us turn inward now to receive these words for a spoken meditation. Spirit of life and love, this weekend we honor the legacy of Dr. King that remains in our hearts as a vibrant challenge to love our neighbor and to work for systemic change to bring about the beloved community among us. We live in times of deep division, mistrust, and violence, times that were familiar to Dr. King. The social progress, dismantling Jim Crow, and witnessing gains by Black people and people of color, especially the election of a Black president, sadly has energized racist resistance and fear. May this backlash against the small gains in building a just and equitable society not intimidate us. May our hearts and minds remain open to the truth and value of racial reconciliation. May we renew our commitment to justice and peace, pursued through cooperation and love. May we be filled with the confidence that we might realize and accept that we are all members of the same human family. May the example of Dr. King inspire us to see one another as interrelated parents, siblings, and children with a common origin, and destiny, guided by the conviction that together we can nobly fulfill the promise of our nation. May the spirit of all that we value and call holy be our inspiration and partner to create communities of justice, peace, and freedom for all. May we take these words and our own thoughts, reflections, and prayers into a time of silent meditation. Last Sunday, I wrestled with the zero-sum thinking and its link to racism and white supremacy. The polarizing thinking that there are only winners and losers. Critical resources are limited, and there isn't enough for everyone, especially power. If you're elevated, I am demoted. It is a competition, and only one person or one group can be on top. There is another way to approach social existence that might be described as the sum of us. It is the opposite of zero-sum thinking. It dismantles and rejects racism and white supremacy. It seeks ways for us to find common values, to share, to innovate, to expand resources and create opportunities. Rather than polarizing people, this approach connects people in a wider network of mutuality. Some of us is what is at the heart of Dr. King's thinking and preaching. In preparation for this morning, I reread a beautiful sermon he preached on the scripture, "Who is my neighbor?" Dr. King celebrated the Good Samaritan, who embodied in action the qualities that were necessary to defeat racism. The qualities of universal altruism that transcends tribe, race, and class. Dangerous altruism that put the well-being of another before his own. And excessive altruism that extended beyond what might be expected. They are all high ideals put into practice that make the Samaritan so memorable. Dr. King preached, court orders and federal enforcement agencies are of inestimable value in achieving desegregation. But desegregation is only a partial, though necessary, step toward the final goal, which we seek to realize genuine intergroup and interpersonal living. Desegregation will break down the legal barriers and bring men together physically, but something must touch their hearts and souls of men. Something must touch the hearts and souls of men so that they will come together spiritually because it is natural and right. Much as Heather McGhee enjoys making her case with data and statistics, she is also looking for just the quality that Dr. King highlights here. What is it that touches people's hearts and souls, that moves them from zero sum to some of us thinking? She found an answer, listening to Bridget's experience fighting for $15 an hour. Bridget was very skeptical. The word that she used was insane, that Wendy's would consider anything like $15 an hour a few years ago. She had been an honors student that had to drop out of school to support her family when her mother got sick. She, with 3 children, had been working in fast food for a decade and saw herself in a dead end. But she decided to go to the Stand Up for Kansas City organizing meeting anyway to see about this $15 an hour idea. McGhee writes, when a Latinx woman rose and described her life, 3 children in a 2-bedroom apartment with plumbing issues, the feeling of being trapped in a life where she didn't have any opportunity to do anything better, Bridget was moved. Bridget said, I was really able to see myself in her. And at that point, I decided that the only way we were going to fix it was if all of us came together. Whether we were white, black, brown, it didn't matter. For Bridget to see herself in a Latinx worker was a breakthrough. She admitted, when I first joined the movement, I had been fed the whole line of these immigrant workers were coming over here and stealing our jobs, not paying taxes, committing crimes, and causing problems. It was other white people in my family who believed these kinds of racist ideas. You know, us against them. But she said she saw her bosses at Wendy's target Latinx workers, falsely promising them a raise if they didn't join the strikes. They knew that if our Latino workers joined with our black and white workers, that we'd have our strength in numbers and that we was going to win. Since joining Stand Up KC, Bridget's worldview has changed. She says, in order for all of us to come up, it's not a matter of me coming up and them staying down. It's a matter of, in order for me to come up, they have to come up too. Because we have to come up together. Because honestly, as long as we're divided, we're conquered. The only way that we're going to succeed is together. Another woman's heart who was changed is Cecile. Her ancestors were French-Canadian speaking Canadians who came to Lewiston, Maine, to work in the cotton mills and shoe factories 100 years ago. She shunned speaking the French she heard around the dinner table as she grew up in the early 1960s. She wanted to talk like real Americans, like Walter Cronkite, and lose any hint of a French accent rather than being teased at school in the playground. Lonely in her retirement, she began to feel a longing for the language heritage she had lost. There was an Anglo-French club of old folks in town, but they were an American social club, uninterested in speaking their ancestral language. She found native French speakers at a weekly meeting of a group of residents of a low-income housing project. They were immigrants from Africa that gathered to speak and enjoy their native language. Cecile was the only non-African in the group, and this was a little uncomfortable for her at first until they welcomed her with open arms and enthusiastically helped her speak French with them. Lewiston is a town that saw decline during the deindustrialization of northern states. Their problems and the racist reactionary politics would be familiar to us here in upstate New York. Yet many northern small towns are starting to experience some renewal due to immigrants. Immigrants are bringing new life to these towns and starting new businesses. Without their inclusion and support in these towns, wrote Art Cullen, a local newspaper editor in Storm Lake, Iowa, there would be nobody left to turn out the lights in 2050. In towns like this, Asians and Africans and Latinos are our lifeline, he declared flatly in 2018. We have a little bit of that right here in Albany if we look at the shops right next to us here on Central Avenue. The As-Salam Mosque and the little community that has formed to support it are filling those storefronts. McGhee has 5 discoveries from her research I'd like to summarize for you that support her thesis that we need some of us solutions so we can all prosper together. Number 1, we have reached the productive and moral limit of zero-sum economic model. 2, the best strategy to move forward is to refill the pool of public goods. Generous public benefits are the springboard to build a thriving middle class for all. 3, we need solutions that have universal ends, but means tailored to address damage done by historic oppression. This is a powerful way to frame reparations. 4, zero-sum thinking needs to be systemically uprooted and replaced with zero-sum values. And 5, we must get on the same page before we can turn it. That means finding ways to grab the narrative from the forces selling denial, ignorance, and projection. What zero-sum thinkers continually reject, to their detriment, is the foundation of economics. Trade builds wealth rather than destroying it. When you and I exchange goods, we both get something we want. I exchange something you want for something I want. We both win in the fair trade. The goal of a healthy economy is ensuring that the trading process is fair. Thieves and villains are the ones who don't like fair trades. If you want to be rich, you'd prefer stealing labor and resources, reselling them above their value, and pocketing the difference. Another name for predatory capitalism. But that isn't a good, sustainable way to build wealth with the benefits widely distributed. Throughout history, we've had examples of productive cooperation that builds wealth, where everyone benefits. In these systems, the pie expands. There may be not enough for every desire to be satisfied, but there is plenty for every basic human need to be satisfied. Human well-being is supported by basic needs being met and not being enslaved for wages so that a few can have their every desire satisfied. There is no reason we can't feed and house our citizens here, attend to their health care and education, care for their children, and find meaningful employment for all who need a good job. Those are the universal goods our society should provide for all. Yet the way we get to achieving that goal will not be the same. Some of us have enough already and don't need an extra helping. Some of us have been suffering for 400 years and need an extra boost. Only our governmental systems have the leverage to offer the kind of leg up needed to counter generations of oppression before the 1960s and into today. McGhee references the work of law professor and critical race scholar John A. Powell, director of the Haas Othering and Belonging Institute at the University of California in Berkeley. Powell advocates for targeted universalism. With targeted universalism, you set a universal policy goal and then develop strategies to achieve that goal that take into account the varied situations of the groups involved. Good example McGhee references is home ownership as a universal good. This has been the backbone of the American economy as a way for households to build wealth. Yet many in our society have already achieved this goal and developed significant wealth that way. The ones who haven't are disproportionately non-white former slaves. They are also the ones who were prohibited from buying affordable homes in red-lined areas where banks wouldn't lend. One way to repair that government-supported harm would be to give special protected low-interest loans to ancestors of slaves or those who were refused loans in redlined areas in the past. Targeted solutions to help serve a universal good. One way this is happening here in Albany is the Affordable Housing Partnership Homeless Center. In alliance with the Albany Community Land Trust, they are committed to rebuilding neighborhood housing stock and creating high-quality, permanently affordable housing in the city of Albany. Another universal good is public education. Some school districts have strong tax bases and don't need as much state funding as school districts in more economically depressed areas. All our children need a good education, and teachers need good salaries, whether they are in wealthy or poorer communities. They all need the technical tools and facilities to prepare students to succeed. That isn't happening, as our member of our congregation, Martha Musser, will tell you in great detail. And we can advocate for that change. Another essential universal good is addressing climate change with the Green New Deal. Only government can direct the needed investment before it becomes cost effective to drive this change, to limit the damage we are already doing to our climate, that the children we have yet to be born will have to endure. We can't make significant progress in these hard problems of housing, education, and climate change through zero-sum thinking. We need to move towards sum of us thinking. And what McGhee has found in her work is people are ready for this. She says when people have a chance to create a bond that's not based on skin color or culture, what they actually connect on are the things they value in common. This isn't easy, McGhee says, but surprisingly, the discomfort is a source of power. Dr. Catherine W. Phillips argues this discomfort, which she calls mental friction, creates diversity's powerful, productive energy. Phillips writes, members of a homogeneous group rest somewhat assured that they will agree with one another, that they will understand one another's perspective and beliefs, that they will be able to easily come to a consensus. But when the members of a group notice that they are socially different from one another, they change their expectations. They anticipate differences of opinion and perspective. They assume they will need to work harder to come to consensus. This logic helps to explain both the upside and the downside of social diversity. People work harder in diverse environments, both cognitively and socially. They might not like it, but the hard work can lead to better outcomes. And this is partially the transformative power of encouraging the diversity of Unitarian Universalism. McGhee points out that the diversity that is causing an often unconscious racial panic in so many white Americans is actually our biggest strategic asset. The research has borne this out in education, jurisprudence, business, and in the economy. Put simply, we need each other. Our differences have the potential to make us stronger, smarter, more creative, and fairer. Once we abandon the false idea of zero-sum competition, the benefits of diversity become evident, from the classroom to the courtroom to the boardroom. May we take this message to heart. Even if zero-sum thinking currently stimulates reactivity in you, I encourage you to fortify your mind with the writers and authors who advocate for zero-sum, who advocate for some of us thinking. But that will not convince us fully, just reading about it. Let us test the sum of us approach in action, as Bridget did and as Cecile did, and put ourselves in the places where our hearts and minds can be touched. It is a great way to honor Dr. King's legacy, calling us to love the other and to make common cause around shared values with our neighbors, and not miss the opportunity to cross and erase the lines between us, between them and us. So be it.
I'm Sigrun Newell, and I am the service associate this morning. And now it is time for our offering. An important way we celebrate life each Sunday is by offering an opportunity to practice generosity. Members and friends support our congregation with an annual pledge paid throughout the year. Another way to support the good work of this congregation is by making a generous congregation. If you can see on the slide on the screen, click on the tiny URL link in the chat window, Contribute, or you can send a text to the number shown on the screen. The examples on the slide show how to label your text to indicate the amount and purpose or intent of your gift. For example, to send $50 to the collection plate, you would just text 50. We must now say goodbye to our Facebook friends. Consider joining us on Zoom next time, or visit us at 405 Washington Avenue in Albany. You can find more information about us at albanyuu.org. And now we have the offertory. The music is We Shall Overcome, with the musician Nelson Jacobs Moore.
Good morning. This song, I suppose, was sung in churches for many, many years. The first time that it was documented as a protest song was in 1909, when during a coal strike, the workers sang this song on the strike line. It reappeared again in 1947 when tobacco farmers struck and they sang this song. And that was before it became sort of the unofficial anthem of the civil rights movement. The arrangement that I'm going to do is an arrangement that was done by Natalie Robinson Wiley, Artie Walser, and myself, Nelson Jacobs Moore, as the vocal group Black Tie. We shall overcome someday.
We enjoy welcoming guests and visitors to our service. We have one guest here, and if you'll come forward and tell us your name, we welcome you. Will you take your mask off, please?
Oh, I forgot. Hi, my name is Blanche Mandel. It's my first time here. Thank you.
Welcome. On Zoom, you can click the raised hand symbol, which you'll find either in the participant window or in the reactions button on your Zoom toolbar. Our technician will invite you to unmute and introduce yourself. You may also, or instead, click on the visitor link that you will find in the chat window. It appears that we don't have anybody raising their hands. Okay, then we welcome everybody who's joined us today. If you'd like to learn more about our congregation or Unitarian Universalism, you can speak with one of us. Or in Zoom, you can find in the participant window someone with welcome before their name. You can reach out to that person privately in the chat window, now or after the service. We welcome the chance to greet each other. The people here joining us on Zoom will be offered virtual breakout rooms. You can say hello and share your name. This will last about 2 minutes, and then we'll all come back together. You can click on breakout rooms to send yourself to the right place.
It sounded great, Nelson. Beautiful, beautiful.
Amazing. Sends shivers down my spine.
I'm going to start closing the breakout rooms now. We'll give a 30-second message.
Brewer, who is a member of our congregation and also the treasurer of our congregation, had a brain hemorrhage and died on Wednesday, and tragically. And we did a impromptu remembrance gathering for him on Thursday. There is a recording of that if you'd like to hear some of the connections that we made there, and especially holding him in our hearts today. For all of the joys and sorrows that were left unspoken, as well as the ones that we've heard, let us hold all that we've heard and felt in our hearts as I move one more stone to honor them. The prayer of affirmation I'd like to share with you is the one that I used at the end of that Thursday gathering. I just feel it's appropriate to share it here as well as we remember and dedicate it to him. This is titled Prayer for the Dead and the Living by Elizabeth Cunningham. And let us turn inward to receive these words. Whenever we are brave, whenever we are kind, whenever we face ourselves, whenever we forgive, the dead shall live, the dead shall live. Whenever we join hands, whenever we pray, whenever we mourn, whenever our roots reach down to drink from living waters, the dead shall live, the dead shall live. Whenever we think clearly, whenever we act justly, whenever we sing though our hearts are breaking, whenever we make beauty, the dead shall live, the dead shall live. Then they will know the gift of their death is received. Then they will know the seed of their death bears good fruit. Then they will know they are not lost. Then they will know they are not lost. And the dead shall live in us, and the dead shall live in us. So be it. And our last song, I Wish I Knew How, and that's Billy Taylor and Dick Dallas, arranged by M.A. Walden, and our song leaders, Chris Jetson and Randy Rosette.
As we extinguish the chalice, please join us in the words shown on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of conviction. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. The benediction this morning is paraphrased from the books of Heather McGhee. Our nation faces a choice between two visions. We can hold on white-knuckled to a tiny vision of we the people, distrusting other. Or we can say that our nation's salvation is to reject a belief in racial hierarchy. To do that, our destiny, we must challenge ourselves to live our lives in solidarity across color, origin, and class. We must demand changes to the economic rules that value some people more than others. Currently, the United States is not more than the sum of its disparate parts, but it could be. If it were, all of us would prosper. In short, we must emerge from this crisis with a new birth of freedom, rooted in the knowledge that we, the people, means all of us. We become greater than the sum of us. And next we have acknowledgements. Our thanks especially to our musician, Nason Jacobs-Moore, Chris Jensen, and Randy Rosette. The ushers, Dawn Dana, Chuck Manning, and Jean Poppy. Pastoral Care Associates, Sharon Babila and Sandy Stone. Me, the Service Associate. The Welcomer, Don Odell. Office support from Tammy Goddard Hathaway and Patience Bissett. Technical support from Kate Pierce and Dick Dana. And the flowers were donated today by Barb and Chuck Manning in celebration of their daughter Tracy's birthday. And now we see if we have any announcements. Kate, do you have anything up there?